Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video, we are looking at Fluence Energy. This was a stock analysis request from one of the followers, and I wanted to let you know that anyone can make these requests and I'll most likely cover them, especially if there is an actionable trade setup to follow. And in the case of this chart, we have already built from our larger time frame perspective an initial three-wave move to the downside. This is suggesting to us that we have likely formed the count fully and that we can look for the larger uptrend to begin from here. Additionally to that, we have already pushed far beyond what we would be able to track in terms of resistances, even within the idea of a larger diagonal structure building or potentially even a larger ABC movement. In the end, I believe the uptrend is much more likely to stay already in terms of probabilities from an Elliott Wave perspective. Now, from the all-time low, we have a couple of scenarios here on the chart, and depending on which one plays out, we could be looking for further extensions sooner rather than later, but in the long run, within either interpretation, I would still be looking for a bullish structure. I would still be looking for a 1-2 setup to eventually unfold, and I would still be looking for a follow-up impulse in a wave 3. Now, in the yellow interpretation, we are tracking a leading diagonal, meaning in each of the subwaves of this pattern, we have an ABC structure. Here in wave 1, an ABC structure tracked in a wave 3, and an ABC structure we are tracking right now within a fifth wave. In the white scenario, we are tracking what is a bit unrealistic within the idea of an impulse. It could theoretically work because we haven't broken any relevant levels of support, we haven't invalidated any structure to not be able to track this idea, but here we would instead have basically a double 1-2, 1-2 setup, and for the rest we actually have it on the chart, a 1-2, third, fourth, and the fifth that would be unfolding right now. We should notice that within this wave 3, it wasn't necessarily the case that we reached the ideal target very easily. It was towards the end of this third wave, but it was achieved. We can consider this to be the actual wave 3 very easily. We had our correction in a wave 4, and we are looking at an ending diagonal to form in a fifth wave. But the difference between these two scenarios would be that within the white interpretation, we would consider here to build a 5-wave pattern to the upside. Within the yellow scenario, we would instead expect to build a 3-wave pattern. However, within the yellow structure, this movement would be expected to push a little higher. We would expect an even larger movement than necessarily within the white interpretation. Now, moving on into the actual structures we are tracking internally. Again, we are tracking an ending diagonal in the white structure, and here we would consider this to be a wave 1 up, a wave 2 down, and now we would be looking still for higher prices within a wave 3. We would still expect to reach the ideal target if this is to be trusted as a wave 3 and look for the follow-up correction in a wave 4, and that would be at the $40.8 level. We have so far only achieved the 100% extension to the $32.8 level, and based on this structure, I would consider that we would still like to see a fourth and a fifth before assuming a more significant top to be in place. Further extensions will be possible even after that, but I wouldn't require them as we would have a clearly full count. Currently, I strongly expect that we get another high within this structure before we would assume a top to be in place, and for the area of support of our internal wave 4 correction, we will need to be tracking here the levels between the 23.6% retracement all the way down to the 61.8% retracement, as within this structure we are also tracking a diagonal pattern. We might be able actually to even see an impulse workout, but I'm extremely skeptical, and I believe it is best we reside within this idea where we are looking for support at the levels between the $30.5 all the way down to the $26.2 level. Now, keep in mind, if we form here something like a wave 4 into the 38.2% retracement and build a fifth wave, we might not actually manage to achieve the ideal target for wave 3. We might come short, and it will be a bad sign for the likelihood of this being in the end a wave 3, but we will need to figure out if we will manage to hold the wave 4 support area afterwards, even without reaching the ideal target for the wave 3. I will have significant doubts and I will be prepared for a more substantial top to be in place, to be honest. But right now, I would still prefer to form another high on this chart at the very least. Now, with that said, we can actually even hide here our white interpretation and focus on the yellow scenario, where we have a simpler structure, I would say, because we have just an A, B, C pattern to build. Within this structure, we would still be looking at an ending diagonal within the wave C, but we aren't necessarily looking at internal patterns too much, as in the case of this structure, the wave 3 would already be complete, and we would be looking for a correction in a wave 4. I do want to mention, however, in the case of this chart, we won't necessarily be focusing on extensions because remember, we are towards the end of a quite substantial uptrend, and based on this context, we should be prepared for a more significant top to form sooner rather than later, especially since within both structures we are tracking a diagonal pattern in this push to the upside, which is even more suggestive of a substantial top being closer than we may expect. Now, in the case of this structure, again, still an ending diagonal pattern unfolding, and we are looking at the area of support for the wave 4 correction. It's still between the 23.6% retracement all the way down to the 61.8% retracement. So we are watching the levels between the $29.6 all the way down to the $24.3 level. In the case of the yellow structure, we can see that this would be allowed a deeper retracement. We would normally expect even a larger retracement than within the smaller structure we were tracking in white, but ultimately we would still expect to form another high within this area. I have to caution you, however, if we fall below the 61.8% retracement in yellow, the $24.3 level, it would be a strong signal that this structure will not be able to be tracked reliably and that a more substantial top may in fact already be in place. I personally don't find this as a high likelihood, although I cannot rule it out, and if this is to happen, we might even need to consider something like an ABC pattern to unfold within this area, although I would be strongly prepared for a more significant top to be in place, and I wouldn't be looking for positions, especially, once again, below the $24.3 level. For me, that is the level that is extremely important for continuation to higher prices in a more clear structure, which it is important, yeah, it is very important to have clear structures. Now, in terms of our correction that is forming right now, today we actually had quite some downside, we could be expecting something like an A, B, C pattern to unfold, and we could be looking for an estimative ideal target of the supposed wave C, that would be the 100% extension of the wave A around the $29.5 level, very much in line with the first level of support. If we get into the area of support, we would have already fulfilled the minimum expectations. Yeah, we have a 3-wave pattern. Into the area of support, we are looking for the next wave to the upside to be possible to unfold. And for now, honestly, there isn't much to add. This chart seems rather complicated, but I believe it's simpler than many because the areas of support are clearly defined. Now, I want you to remember, we are watching for continuation to higher prices against the $24.3 level. Extensions are theoretically possible, but I believe we should be on the safer side, especially since a large uptrend has already formed on this chart and we do see significant divergences even on the weekly time frame, yeah? Oftentimes, protecting your assets and your profits is much more important than getting an additional 10% or something like that, yeah? But for now, again, there isn't much else to add. These are the levels. This is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, don't forget to subscribe and let me know what else you want me to cover. And I'll do my best to do that in the days and weeks ahead. And until then, I hope you have a nice day and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.